The morning sunlight streamed through the lace curtains of my farmhouse kitchen, casting soft patterns across the worn oak table where I'd shared breakfast with my late husband, Richard, for almost 50 years. Even now, 5 years after his funeral, I still set out 2 coffee mugs before remembering he wasn't here anymore. Habits, I suppose, are like ghosts, they linger even when love is gone. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 70 years old, and I've lived my entire life on this quiet patch of Vermont farmland. People think grief fades, but it doesn't. It just settles into the corners of your days, becoming something you learn to live alongside. That morning, I thought it would be an ordinary Tuesday until my daughter-in-law, Clara, forgot her phone. Clara visited every Tuesday like clockwork. She'd bring pastries, ask about the crops, smile just enough to make me wonder whether she actually cared or was simply maintaining appearances. Clara was the kind of woman who never had a hair out of place, who color-coordinated grocery lists and spoke in that calm, perfect tone that always felt like a performance. My son Daniel adored her. I tried to. When she left that morning, the house went still again. I was washing the mugs, the warm water soothing my hands, when I heard a faint buzzing sound. At first, I thought it was a bee trapped near the window. September always brought them, but the noise came again, more mechanical this time. I turned, and there it was, a smartphone vibrating on the wooden sideboard near the front door. I wiped my hands and walked over. The screen lit up, and in an instant my world tilted. Richard's face smiled up at me, a picture I didn't recognize. He was wearing a purple shirt I'd never seen, standing in front of a cabin I didn't know. His smile was broad, too broad, like he was laughing at a joke someone else had told. Beneath his image glowed a new message. Tuesday again, same time, counting down the minutes until I can hold you. For a long moment I just stared, my breath caught in my throat. My hands trembled. Richard had been gone for years. The phone belonged to Clara, yet here he was, his photo, his name, and a message filled with longing. Something inside me shifted, a quiet, cold awareness that life as I knew it was about to change forever. I stood frozen, staring at that screen as if it might explain itself. My husband's photo. My daughter-in-law's phone. The words of a secret I was never meant to read. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the walls closer. I told myself there had to be some mistake. Maybe Clara was helping someone with an old photo, maybe it was a scam. But curiosity has a way of silencing reason. My fingers moved before my mind could stop them. Clara had never been careful with her passcode. I'd seen her type it dozens of times. 0821, my grandson Noah's birthday. The screen unlocked with a soft click, like the sigh of a door opening to a forbidden room. Messages filled the screen. Hundreds of them. The contact name was a single letter T. I scrolled upward and my stomach turned. You make me feel alive again. Thank you for last night. Your husband suspects nothing. Each message was more intimate than the one before. I felt like I was drowning, each new word pulling me deeper beneath a tide of disbelief. Then I saw it. He'll never know about us. We'll be careful. The date was from 3 years ago, 2 years before Richard died. The phone slipped slightly in my hand, slick with sweat. My mind tried to reason, to find a version of reality that made sense. But there was only one explanation. Clara had been having an affair with my husband. I kept scrolling. There were photos too, Richard smiling in ways I hadn't seen in years. His arm around Clara's waist, her lips against his cheek. In one, they were standing near my old red barn, the same barn Richard and Daniel had rebuilt when Noah was a teenager. My home, my life, my husband, my daughter-in-law. I sat down hard in the chair by the door, clutching the phone as if it could hold me upright. Memories flashed through my mind, Richard's unexplained absences, his visits to his brother's house, Clara's sudden kindness during his final months. Every moment I'd brushed off as coincidence now fit together with cruel precision. The air felt heavy, pressing against my chest. I wanted to throw the phone, to shatter it and erase what I'd seen. But instead I stared at it, reading every word, every confession, every betrayal. The last message in the thread glowed back at me. The farm is perfect. She never suspects. Make sure the old woman doesn't see us. The old woman, me. My hands began to shake, not from weakness but from something deeper, a quiet fury. I realized then that grief wasn't the only thing that could live quietly in a house. So could betrayal, and revenge was beginning to stir beside it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with Clara's phone in front of me, the screen dark now, but the words still burned behind my eyes. Betrayal has a sound. It's the hum of a refrigerator at 2 a.m., the creak of an old farmhouse settling, the quiet pulse of your own heartbeat when the world stops making sense. By morning, I'd convinced myself there had to be more truth, more proof, something to explain how far this betrayal went. I brewed coffee, though I barely tasted it, and reopened the phone. The newest message sat waiting, timestamp just before midnight. Same time today. The cabin. Bring the wine. The cabin. My heart stuttered. Richard used to mention a cabin, one he'd inherited from his uncle years ago, somewhere near Lake Champlain. He'd said he sold it before our retirement, claimed the upkeep was too much, but if the cabin still existed, then the lie had started long before I ever found that phone. I searched through the photos again, paying closer attention this time. In one, Richard stood beside Clara, both of them laughing, the edge of a wooden porch visible behind them. A small sign hung over the doorframe, the paint faded but readable, Hayes Cabin. My husband hadn't sold it, he'd kept it and shared it with her. The phone buzzed suddenly, making me jump. Another message from T. Don't forget the purple dress, you know it drives me crazy. I stared at the words until they blurred. My breathing grew shallow. Whoever T was, he wasn't a stranger. He knew about Richard, about the cabin, about the history. The affair hadn't ended when Richard died. It had continued with someone else stepping into his place. My thoughts spun toward one name, Thomas, Richard's nephew. He'd helped manage the estate after Richard's death, always checking on the property records, always offering to handle the details. I remembered his smooth charm, his quiet confidence, and how Clara always smiled a little too brightly when he visited. The truth was no longer unthinkable, it was unfolding. They weren't just lovers, they were partners, and whatever they were planning next, it wasn't over. I set the phone down, my pulse steady now, a strange calm replacing the shock. Tuesdays, the cabin, the wine, if that was where their lies lived, then that was where I'd find the truth. 2 days passed before I saw anyone. I avoided phone calls, skipped church, and pretended I had a cold when neighbors stopped by. My mind was a storm I couldn't quiet. Every time I tried to rest, I saw Richard's smile in those photos, Clara's hand on his chest, the way she'd called me mom while sneaking behind my back. Then, late Friday afternoon, I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. Through the window, I saw a police car. My stomach clenched. A tall woman in a gray coat stepped out, her badge catching the last of the sunlight. "Mrs. Hayes?" she asked, extending a hand. "I'm Detective Morrison with the Vermont State Police. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your husband's death." "My husband died 5 years ago," I said slowly. "Heart attack." She nodded. "That's what the report said, but we've reopened the case after receiving new information." I gestured for her to come inside, my mind already racing. What information? From whom? She opened a notebook and flipped to a page. "We received an anonymous complaint suggesting your husband may not have died of natural causes." The letter included details about medication changes, arguments, and financial motive. "Financial motive," I repeated. "Yes, ma'am. It mentions a life insurance policy purchased 3 months before his death, $500,000, with you listed as the beneficiary." I blinked. "That's impossible. I didn't even know about that policy." The detective's pen paused. "You never received a payout?" "No, my son and I handled Richard's estate. There was no policy, no paperwork, nothing." Detective Morrison's gaze was steady, assessing. "Then someone else accessed your joint account to pay the premium. We're still tracing it." I felt lightheaded. Clara had managed our bills during Richard's illness. She'd said she wanted to help. And now this another trail leading straight to her. Morrison closed her notebook. "I'll need to speak with your daughter-in-law and your son as well. For now, please don't discuss this investigation with anyone." As she left, I stood frozen at the doorway, watching her car disappear down the road. The words "anonymous complaint" echoed in my head. Someone had accused me of murdering my husband. I glanced toward the drawer where Clara's phone was hidden and whispered into the empty house. "If it's war you want, you've just declared it." That night, I told Daniel everything. Not every sordid detail, but enough. About Clara's phone, the messages, the photos, and the detective's visit. At first, he stared at me in disbelief. Then he asked to see the phone. The look on his face as he scrolled through the messages broke something inside me. "She was sleeping with Dad," he whispered, his voice raw. all those years while pretending to care for him. I wanted to reach for him to take away the pain, but there are some truths that can't be softened. There's more, I said quietly. She's still seeing someone, a man named T. Daniel rubbed his temples. Tom, it has to be Tom. He was right. Thomas Hayes, Richard's nephew, Daniel's cousin. The same man who'd handled the estate paperwork after Richard's death. He'd been around constantly back then, always volunteering to help Clara with finances, acting like a hero when I was too numb to think straight. We need proof, Daniel said. We spent the next morning combing through the phone again. Clara had been meticulous, deleted call logs, hidden photos, but she hadn't known about metadata. Daniel connected the phone to my laptop and extracted location data from her images. One file contained GPS coordinates from just 3 weeks earlier. Here, he said, pointing to the screen, Lake Champlain area. It was less than an hour's drive north, the cabin. We left before dusk, Daniel's truck bumping along the back roads until the pavement turned to gravel. The air grew colder, the trees thicker. Finally, through the trees we saw it, a small wooden cabin with a green roof, lights glowing softly in the windows. Clara's silver SUV was parked beside a dark blue pickup Tom's. My pulse quickened. Daniel parked a short distance away, behind a clump of trees. We moved quietly, staying low. The lake shimmered faintly behind the cabin, the air heavy with pine and deceit. Through a narrow window I saw them, Clara and Tom, sitting at a table, laughing, glasses of wine between them. Daniel pulled out his phone and began recording. Their voices carried through the thin wooden walls. "Can you believe she still doesn't suspect?" Tom said, smirking. Clara leaned back in her chair, her tone dripping with contempt. The detective bought the story. Once they arrest Eleanor, the insurance money clears. My stomach turned to ice. $500,000 split right down the middle, Tom continued. And after she's gone, no one will question a thing. Clara raised her glass. To Richard Hayes, the man who made it all possible. The clink of crystal echoed in the night. Daniel's hand tightened around mine. They had murdered my husband and were framing me for it. I looked at my son, his jaw set, eyes burning. "Now we know," I whispered, "and they're not getting away with it." When we got back to the farmhouse, neither of us spoke for a long time. The truck engine clicked as it cooled, the sound filling the silence between us. I could still hear their voices in my head, the smugness, the laughter, the ease with which they'd plotted my destruction. Daniel finally broke the silence. "We take this recording to the police, right now." I shook my head. "We can't. Vermont requires two-party consent for audio recordings. Without their permission, it's inadmissible. They'll claim we trespassed and the evidence will be thrown out. Then they'll come after us for real." "So, what are we supposed to do? Just wait until they finish destroying us?" "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We make them confess legally, in a way no one can dispute." Daniel frowned. "How?" I thought back to the detective's visit, to the complaint, the way Clara had turned everything I'd done into a weapon against me. If she wanted to play a long game, she'd chosen the wrong opponent. "We set a trap," I said. "I'll meet Tom alone. I'll tell him I'm willing to confess to Harold's N.O., Richard's death, to take the blame, as long as they agree to keep you and Noah safe. I'll make it sound like I'm surrendering." Daniel's eyes widened. "Mom, that's insane." "It's strategic," I corrected softly. "If he believes I'm broken, he'll let his guard down. But before I meet him, I'll tell him I'm recording everything for my protection. That makes the confession legal. If he admits the truth while knowing I'm recording, that's evidence they can't bury." Daniel hesitated. "What if they try to hurt you?" I smiled faintly. "They won't expect a 70-year-old woman to fight back. They see me as fragile, harmless. That's their mistake." The next morning I called Detective Morrison, pretending concern. I told her I'd received threats. I didn't give names but said I planned to meet the person behind them and would record the conversation legally. I gave her the location, the cabin, and told her to come if I didn't call by 1 o'clock. Then I began to write. Not a confession, but a testimony disguised as one. I detailed everything I knew, every name, every transaction. It wasn't just words on paper, it was bait. By noon I was ready. The plan was dangerous, but so was doing nothing. Daniel stood at the door, eyes red. "If something happens..." I squeezed his hand. "If something happens, you tell Detective Morrison everything. But don't worry," I said, slipping the recorder into my jacket. This old woman isn't going down quietly. The drive back to the cabin felt longer than it was. Every mile of cracked asphalt seemed to hum with the ghosts of every secret Richard, Clara, and Tom had buried there. The closer I got, the calmer I became. Fear had already done its worst, now there was only clarity. When I arrived, the sun was setting over the lake, turning the water into sheets of orange and gold. Tom's truck was already parked out front. I stepped out, holding my small leather bag, the one I used to bring pies to church gatherings. Inside it was my recorder and the note I'd written as bait. Tom opened the door before I could knock. He smiled that rehearsed smile I'd once mistaken for charm. "Eleanor," he said, "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I'm tired of running," I replied softly. "If you want my confession, you'll have it. But I'm recording this for my own safety." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Fine, whatever makes you feel better." Inside, the air smelled of smoke and wine. Clara was there, sitting by the fireplace, her expression colder than I'd ever seen. "You should have stayed quiet," she said. "It would have been easier for everyone." I placed the recorder on the table. "Then let's make it easy. Tell me what really happened." For a moment, no one moved. Then Tom chuckled. "She wants story time, Clara. Should we tell her how it really went? How you switched the pills? How Richard trusted you right up until the end?" "Stop," Clara hissed, but it was too late. The front door burst open. Glass shattered. "Police, hands where we can see them." Detective Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. Tom reached for something under the table, a gun, but Daniel was faster. He crashed through the side window, tackling Tom to the floor as officers flooded in. The recorder was still running, capturing every word, every confession. For the first time in 5 years, I exhaled. Justice had finally stepped into that cursed cabin. The next few weeks passed like a dream I couldn't wake from. Police cars, statements, trials, words that used to belong to television dramas now filled my real life. The evidence was overwhelming, the audio recording, the financial records, and the video Daniel had taken outside the cabin weeks earlier. Clara and Tom were both charged with second-degree murder, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to frame me for a crime I didn't commit. During the trial, Clara avoided my eyes. She looked smaller somehow, no perfect smile, no polished charm, just fear. Tom tried to shift the blame, but the judge didn't buy it. When the verdict was read, I felt no triumph, only release. Richard finally had his peace, and so did I. Months later, I sat on the porch of my farmhouse, the same wooden boards Richard built decades ago. Daniel joined me, holding 2 mugs of coffee just like his father used to. My grandson Noah ran through the fields, his laughter cutting through the quiet like sunlight through fog. "You did it, Mom?" Daniel said softly. "No," I whispered, watching the horizon. "We did it. And maybe he's watching too." The insurance money was returned to Richard's estate. I used it to create a scholarship fund in his name. Money meant for lies now turned into something that could help others tell the truth. As the sun dipped behind the trees, I thought about everything that had happened. Betrayal, grief, justice, they'd all walked through my door. But so had strength. Age hadn't weakened me, it had taught me patience, clarity, and courage. If you're listening to this story, remember, no matter how dark it gets, truth has a way of finding its way home. Like this video if you believe wisdom and justice never grow old, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.